I'm going to be like Michelle here. I'm introducing Bill Whyte, and there were just so many things on his bio that I think they told me I had a minute, so I tried to sum it down. How? I got 3 minutes. Okay. Well, so I'm going to read a little bit. Bill is currently the National Sales Director for Oncology. He's held numerous leadership roles within J&J sales and marketing, including National Sales Director for Janssen Therapeutics. Played a critical role in the creation of the JSHI, the Janssen Specialty Hepatitis Immunology. He's also Group Director, Worldwide Marketing for Orthoclinical Diagnostics. Bill's had a consistent track record of building winning teams, successfully leading through change and demonstrating commitment of individual growth and development. So I've been in the oncology franchise now for about 4 or 5 months, and there are 3 words that consistently come up when I hear Bill Whyte's name, and that's people, engagement, and success. And Greg Williams, the DM of the Ohio Valley First Team, summed it up perfectly when he said, Bill is consistently taking it to the next level and inspires others to do so. Bill's also been very actively involved with the AALC at a national level. So as a fellow Kansas City Chiefs and Royals fan and fellow Kansas City barbecue connoisseur, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill Whyte.
So I've been with J&J for 26 years and started as a college overhire. Today was a crazy day for us. We had, starting at 5 o'clock, we had a series of 20-minute discussions with analysts about Darzalex, which we got approval for last evening. So I had to blow up Tisha's day today, but we started at 5 o'clock with Meg Terrell from CNBC, and then 5:30 with Jonathan Rocket from the Wall Street Journal. And you know, Johnson & Johnson is viewed as preeminently the best pharmaceutical company in the US right now. And so I think it's important that you all recognize what a terrific company you work for. And sometimes that is lost as you go through your day-to-day activity. But Johnson & Johnson really is seen as the preeminent pharmaceutical company in the US right now. We have the most sales from new products in the last 5 years. We are the fastest growing pharmaceutical business. In 2016, we'll add about $2.5 billion in incremental revenue over and above our base of about $17 billion. So we are unquestionably, you know, a growth engine for Johnson & Johnson. The MD&D business is starting to turn around. I think they expect to get about 2% growth in 2016. The consumer business, for the first time, experienced growth in 5 years. So that's great, right? And hopefully all of that will be reflected in the increased stock price at some point, so that we can all retire and pay for our kids to go to college and all that other good stuff. So listen, let me just highlight a couple of things that Ryan said. So Ryan did a great job, and I wanna highlight a couple of things that he said that are really important. One is your personal brand does matter. I read a book about 6 years ago not 6 years, probably 3 years ago. I actually brought it with me to refresh myself on the plane. It's by a woman named Sylvia Ann Hewitt. And if you haven't read it, darn, I left it in the car. I would encourage you to do it, and it's called Executive Presence. And in the book, she talks about the 3 things that people decide on whether or not you're going to be credible or not with your brand. And it really is about how you look, how you act, and how you sound. And those are all controllable things that we have in our control. But those 3 things really play into how people are going to think about you. To much of what Ryan talked about, you know, how you look and how you act is important. You know, when I walk into a meeting, one of my biggest pet peeves at Janssen Oncology is that it's got a culture of lateness. Every freaking meeting that we start is late. Every meeting that happens runs over time. Every meeting that we are in just lasts too long. And one of my objectives is to change that. But when people start late, they're not prepared, that's part of your brand. So the things that you do, in addition to the way that you look and you sound, are also a part of your brand, and that's important. And as Ryan mentioned, I can't tell you the number of calibrations, although we don't do that anymore, right? The number of calibrations that I've been a part of when somebody's name goes up on the board and someone says they should be rated X, and it's like wolves coming out of the closet because of things that not all of which are related to your individual performance. And that goes to how you act at meetings, how you decide to get back to people or not on email, the substance of your email, the timeliness of your email, whether or not you show up for things on time or late. So all those things do matter. And it's a part of working in this environment where you have this what and this how, but that's an important part of how people are evaluated. So kudos to Ryan for talking about something that's really important. You know, the other thing that's important is it's going to be more a part of how you're evaluated in this new rating system that we have. So don't let anybody fool you. The leadership or lack of leadership is more important than the what. I guarantee you that. Because the what is what you actually do, right? Those are your results. You can get a poor rating in the what and live to fight another day. You get a poor rating in the leadership piece, that's not good. It's just not. And so you won't see written on any document that the leadership component of the rating system is more important, but it really is, because that's all in your control. That's all about how you do things to drive results. So don't forget about that in the context of our new rating system. And I got a piece of advice 12 years ago that I've always thought about, and it is how you, and this is going to seem a little bit trite and a little bit prescriptive, but how you manufacture the rating that you want. So this individual told me several years ago, he said, Bill, at the beginning of every year, what you need to do is put yourself in that meeting in October of the preceding year, of the following year. So I know right now that there's going to be a meeting in October of 2016. And at that meeting are going to be some people, and my name and my picture, just like it did right there, is going to go up on the board. And they're going to talk about what Bill accomplished and how he did it. And so this individual told me, he said, what you need to do going into the beginning of the year, because it happens every year, you get an email from your manager, and your manager says, hey, Greg, I need 6 people to reach out to on your multi-rater. Okay? So do that in January of the year, right? So I already know who I'm going to reach out to in October of 2016 to fill out my multi-rater to say what I need them to say to get the rating that I need. And what I need them to say are the following. Bill is a phenomenal collaborator. So there's a person who will remain nameless who is going to say, Bill is a phenomenal collaborator. So what's my goal over the course of the year? It's to give her stories and opportunities to be able to easily share why Bill is a great collaborator. Who's the next person? It's somebody in finance who's going to say, Bill is a great steward of our resources. So I need to give him stories throughout the year around where I'm not frivolously spending the company's money, where I'm putting appropriate controls and accountability in my organization in place, so that he can go back in October when he's sitting in that meeting and very easily say, you know what, let me tell you 2 things that Bill did to really proactively manage our company's resources. And I think that's just a different way. That's a strategic way of managing your performance. You know, I read a book a few years ago, and the title of the book was Being Strategic. And in this book, this lady says the definition of being strategic is the ability to make core directional decisions in a consistent way to take you to your hoped-for aspirational place. So that requires a couple things, right? If you're going to be strategic and you follow that definition, A, you have to have a hoped-for aspirational place, right? You can't say, you know, I want my son, Jack, to be a great basketball player. But Jack doesn't want to practice. And you don't want to put Jack in camps to get Jack better. And I'm not saying Jack's not a great basketball player. I know he made the 9th grade team. But the point is, if you don't have a vision for where you're going, then it's just a hope. It's a hopefulness, right? But the essence of being strategic is, one, knowing where you want to go, and then consistently making those little bitty everyday decisions to get you closer to that place. And that is a component of managing your performance, which is also a piece of managing your brand, right? And I think those are things that I wish I had learned earlier in my career, but nonetheless, nobody here, I don't think, is getting ready to retire next week. Maybe somebody is, so take me with you. But those are great things to know and to help you continue to build a really, really successful career here at Johnson & Johnson. You know, Johnson & Johnson is a tough place to work. It's tough because there are these 282 little fiefdoms that all act a little bit differently, that have their own cultures, but it's all connected by the same kind of belief in the credo, right? But it takes a really, really lot of effort and work to connect with people, to build your network, and to really try and work your way through the maze of all the different operating companies and systems that J&J has, right? So that's a long way of saying that what Ryan said is really, really important. And I hope that by coming out tonight, you all will, one, recognize the importance of what your brand stands for, and two, think a little bit about how do I more proactively, more strategically manage my career to get the things that I want to get, right? Because at the end of the day, this is, you would not play any other game without knowing the rules. And there are some rules of the road in order to be successful in Johnson & Johnson or any other big company. So that's a component of being successful in the context of Johnson & Johnson. All right, so I think I had some questions, right? Yes. Okay. That I've given a lot of thought to. Yes.
Oh, so I was going to ask one real quick.
Yes.
So thank you for everything, for the words. I think everybody can take a little bit of something away from it. I guess the question I would have is just your opinion. One of the things on the Credo survey that came out really was focused on, career development. And the question was asked of the reps, who do you think is more responsible? Is it your DM or your leadership? Or is it you yourself? Are you more responsible for your career development? So I just kind of like to get your thoughts, after being in J&J for a while about where that falls, and not really a percentage, but really your thoughts on whose responsibility ultimately that is.
Okay, let me do something before I answer that question. I want everybody to close their eyes. Okay, so you can't hopefully see anybody else's hand that goes up. So if you think you are mostly responsible for your career, raise your hands. You, individually. Okay? Keep your eyes closed. If you think your boss is responsible, raise your hands. Okay. So what I'll say is what you probably already know, which is 90% of the people in this room said that you, us, we, me, are responsible for our own careers. And I think that's, if not 100% true, it's close to it, right? When it's all said and done, you are responsible for your career. Having said that, part of the credo says the company owes you competent management. And under the assumption that you have a competent manager, you would assume that that competent manager is helping to guide you, helping to allow you to navigate the landscape that you're in. So I don't think it's all on you as an individual, but I think it's predominantly on you. And if you don't have a competent manager, then you have to find a competent mentor to help you navigate the system that you're in, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be your responsibility, right? So you may not have a manager that can help you navigate the matrix that is J&J. He or she may not be the best at helping you broaden and expand your network. He or she may not be the best at helping to advance and propel and amplify what you do well. But there are other people who can, which is where the mentorship and the network comes into place. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, thanks for that question, Mike. And Mike has started definitely what we call crowd participation, right?
All right.
So the core team has come up with a few questions.
Yep.
But none of us is as smart as all of us.
Yeah.
So we like you all to think of some questions as I ask a few questions to ask in the interim, if that's okay, all right? All right, so the first question, Bill, that we come up with is, what is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
I'll expand it. I think there are two, at least two, right? I think the first one is integrity, right? For me, I would say, you know, what I hope my personal brand is, which is one of the questions, so I'll answer that one too, right, is authenticity and honesty. You know, I'm at a point in my life where, you know, I didn't get to this point yesterday, but let me answer that question first. The integrity and authenticity, to me. But everybody has a different leadership philosophy. You know, I have a leadership philosophy on how I want to run the oncology group. It may be different than the person who was there before me, and it'll probably be different than the person who was there who will come after me. But I have a philosophy around how I want to run the organization. And I think it starts there. You have to philosophically say, here's the way I want to lead, or here's the way I want to show up, right? I think as it relates to the personal brand piece, and it's ironic that we're doing this here at the place where Muhammad Ali is so recognized for all the things that he did, but I think you do have to decide how you want to show up, and that decision can't be wholly different from the way you show up in your personal life, right? You can't have a persona, I don't believe, an authentic persona at work, and then you go home and those two dimensions are discordant. So to me, it starts with sort of at the individual level, right? How do I want to live and act in this place where I work? Because I think that's the only way you get to be authentic. Now, at least that's my personal opinion, right? And everybody may not believe that. I just think it's difficult to act one way 17 hours of the day and be wholly and completely different, you know, when you're not working. So to me, the answer to your question is authenticity and integrity, but that has to be connected to who you really are as an individual. At least that's what Bill thinks.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate that. So, second question real quick. You spoke to this a few minutes ago, but mentorship is a key component in career development. What qualities should one look for in a good mentor?
Yeah, I was telling Tisha on the way down. First of all, how many of you think you have a network? A network. Okay. So let me give you a scenario. You get a call today. Who said they had a network? Okay. Ashley, you get a call tonight from your wonderful district manager who says, hey, listen, Ashley, I'm sorry to tell you, but based on the circumstances that the business is in right now, we're doing away with the whole sales force. You got 30 days to find another opportunity in Janssen. You know, you've been a really valuable part of our organization. We wish you well. How many phone calls is it going to take you to get another job?
So it's network outside of J&J.
In this case, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a little bit slimmer.
So what somebody told me was if it takes you more than 3 phone calls, if you get displaced from your job to get another job, you don't really have a network. What you have is a loose association of acquaintances and friends. And so my point is, don't confuse a loose association of friends and acquaintances and more than 500 people on LinkedIn as a network, right? A network is a compilation of people who have some insight into what you're capable of doing and who are willing and able. It's 2 pieces, willing and able to help you, to propel you, to assist you with your professional endeavors. That's what a network is, right? So, and oh, by the way, if you have a profile on LinkedIn and you're in the car on a phone or you're in a otherwise casual position, go to a professional photographer and get a professional photograph and put it on LinkedIn, because that's part of your brand, right? Did that answer the question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, got a third question.
I don't think I went off on a tangent.
No, that's okay.
The mentorship. So the piece around mentorship, which is after a network, to me, the mentor, as I was telling Tisha on the way down, what you want in a mentor are people who have expertise and skills, quite frankly, that you don't have, or who can amplify what you do have, right? So if you know that one of the things that you want to get better at is business acumen, look for people who are mentors who can help you amplify that skill or competency, right? If you, most sales and marketing people look for other sales and marketing people to be mentors. And as I was telling Tisha, I think one of the best group of people to develop as mentors, if you can get them to be mentors other than just people in your network, are people in Johnson & Johnson recruiting, because they know everything. I have to submit a plan to them about what I'm going to do with my organization in 2016 and 2017. So they know what the opportunity is going to be at a very, very high level inside my organization. And if you happen to develop a relationship with those people, you get insight into what's happening. But most people don't think about the recruiter as a mentor, as somebody who can give you valuable information. And then, of course, their currency is what? People, right? So if you can give them good people, they will give you good information, and then it works out to be a win-win relationship, right?
All right, thank you. So this is my third question, and then we definitely need to throw it to the crowd, so everybody be ready, okay? All right, third question here is, what has been the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome where you are, and how did you do it?
You know, I would say it's probably containing my desire to be authentic and honest in situations that don't do me any good to do that, right? Which kind of goes against what I said, 5 minutes ago. There's a time and a place for everything, and just because you don't agree with something, it doesn't mean that you have to say it in that moment. There are other ways to affect change or affect the system besides just saying what's obvious, right? And so I think that's, that's a challenge that I've had, but I'm aware of it and have people who give me feedback on it. But it's been a challenge.
All right, thank you. So who's next with a question?
Bill, I want to go back to Mike's point. As a people manager, one of the things that I struggle with in helping with people development is the idea of who owns what. There does seem to be, from a rep development, the ownership that your manager owns that, and kind of a blank stare when it comes to their development. Because you've been here for 20 plus years and I've been here for less than 4, can you give me some feedback or give the crowd some feedback on where that might have come to fruition, on where reps feel like that is a managerial responsibility versus an individual responsibility as far as career development? Because it does seem to, especially when it comes down to talent development, it feels like the reps feel like that's your responsibility, that you're supposed to know, even if you just inherited a person, that you're supposed to know this.
Yeah, I think there's a piece of that, right? So I'll go back to what I said earlier. So most of the responsibility falls on the individual, but there's a responsibility for the manager to be able to guide and to help propel people through the organization. There is some piece of that. So some of that is true. I think the other thing is, one of the things that I think most people would agree with is, J&J is a culture of its own. It's different than Amgen, it's different than Pfizer, it's different than Lilly, it's different than Novartis, right? And people are not, as much as they should be, told the honest truth about where they are and what their prospects are for future advancements. And so that's a piece of it, right? Because people often are shown through actions different messages than people deliver verbally, right? So, I had a call 2 days ago with somebody who was telling me about somebody who's in our MVP program. Their rating is partially. So, listen, I just got here. I don't know the individual, but I heard a litany of things around why they should never be a people manager. But then when I asked, the obvious question is, well, okay, so we had an MVP meeting coming up three weeks from now. I saw this person on the list. Why don't you take them out? It's going to demotivate them. More than the PM. So that's a mixed message, and that happens a lot. And I don't think J&J is the only company that happens at. But I think a lot of what you're asking, Katie, comes from people being sent mixed messages and people not being honest with them about where they are and what the prospects are for future development. But don't get me wrong. Again, the credo says all of us, me, you, competent manager. We should have that, right?
No, go ahead. All right, my question is really more around what you talked about is social media. We hear so much about social media now and how it impacts, all aspects of life and getting information. J&J uses it. It's used all the time. But I think when it comes to brand, your personal branding of who you are, what are some of the things that you have seen or would be suggestions on people on being on social media or not being on social media, and how is that impacting maybe some decisions that you've seen made? Yeah,
that's a tricky question, right? So, social media is, one of the things in this article that Ryan spoke to is that your brand has to constantly evolve, right? I think it's hard for you to have a brand that says, I'm a strategic innovator, I'm cutting edge, I am in the know, and then you say, I don't want to deal with social media, right? But that's discordant, right? Because that's the way we're going to communicate 2, 5, 7 years from now. The person that we spoke to at 5 o'clock this morning Meg Terrell has 215,000 followers on CNBC. You know how many people subscribe to the Wall Street Journal? Less than that. So to suggest that you're not going to pay attention to what is clearly a different way of communicating is just to put your head in the sand. I think when it comes to how you want to use it professionally, it has a lot of pluses and it has a lot of minuses, right? I think you need to recognize that it's really easy to Google Millie Turner. And to the extent that you can control what comes up, you should, if it's important to you professionally. Which means, I don't know that I'd be on Facebook posting pictures of the pancakes I had for breakfast this morning. You know, just not what I want the brand to be. Right? And you got to think through that. And I recognize, and I'm not going to pick on, I'm sorry, I forgot your name? Christy. Christy's probably the youngest person in. She might, I don't know.
22.
22, wow, okay. 22. Ryan's probably 26, 27.
I said my shoes were older.
Yeah. But there are a lot of people who just don't have the thoughtfulness and the experience, quite frankly, of knowing what's appropriate to post and what's not. And, you know, people who are 22 years old, you know, you have to remember they just grew up in a much different environment than those of us who are not 22 years old, right? But I do think you have to safeguard your professional identity and be careful about what you want your social presence to be, you know? And we've had several situations where we were ready to offer people jobs. I mean, that's where the background checks start now, you know? And so people just have to be careful about that, you know? So.
Along those lines, how difficult, or is it even possible, maybe Ryan could chime in on this too, to change your brand?
I'll let Ryan comment on that.
Well, I think it is it's definitely possible. But I think that you always, you know, you have to look at these imprints that people have when they think about you. So the more imprints you create that are towards the brand you want versus what you had before, you know, the good thing is people do have short memories, and you know, recent activity often plays heavier than something you did 20 years ago. So you know, it's kind of like your credit report, they fall off after 7 years, if you want to think about it that way. But I think to this topic, you can start right now, and within 5 years, I bet you can be to the brand you want to be, even though you may not be there exactly today. So I do believe it can, you can make it evolve if you're very deliberate in your intention based on what you've declared today in that workshop or what you work on beyond here.
Yeah.
But the importance of the social media, it's personally, I was talking about one of these developmental people on my team, and I was talking with the DM, and he's like, oh yeah, I checked him out on LinkedIn, they look great. I saw the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so I said, oh, that's cool. And he said, then I Googled them, and I saw that this and this came up, that they were at this event here, or they were affiliated with this organization. So this is a real thing. And if you've not Googled yourself lately, Googled yourself lately, that's a pronunciation thing, not the wine. But it's fascinating what comes up. Now, I do have an article that talks about how you correct what comes up. And so if you had, you know, Christy, there's some things that I'm going to be working with her to get taken off from, like the beer bong and things in college. Totally kidding. Yeah, totally
Yeah, it was
kidding.
posted last week. Great.
But you can, you know, the point to this, there are services like your credit report correction that, you know, they advertise and all this stuff, like clean up your credit report, all these things. You can do that with your personal brand online. And we had our recruiter, Jill, do a session for our region about building your career. And when I talked to her before she got on the call, I said, I really want you to dive into the importance of social media and why having a strong LinkedIn, but then managing everything else. But I also want to make sure that if it's not perfect today, you can correct it. And there are ways that you can go through that.
Yeah, I would concur with Ryan. I think you can change your brand. I think the bigger question is, how long is it going to take, and do you want to invest the time to change it, right? And that's again the hard reality that sometimes you have to come to grips with. If people see you as X, it doesn't mean you're X. It just means that's your perception here. And you might be able to change it, but you have to say, do I want to spend 6 years working on trying to change it? You know, or I'll go somewhere else. That's a decision you have to make. But I think you can. It's a function of how long you want to take to change it.
I think also a piece around the feedback. You know, making sure you're getting that feedback.
Yes.
What that perception is of what your brand is, because if you don't internally take in that feedback, I think then you are maybe trying to do something that is not possible based upon skill, ability, and, you know, really what the in-game job maybe looks like.
Sure, yeah.
So you have to be realistic, I think, about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point.
So I have a question for you. You said you started out as a college overhire.
Yes.
And now here you are, National Sales Director. How have you been able to balance moving up the ladder between, like, I guess, staying connected and authentic, and also, I guess, being pulled in those corporate ideals, or as you hear, drinking the corporate Kool-Aid, really, you know, and being able to balance staying kind of connected and authentic through being kind of pulled in many directions?
Yeah, I think part of it is part of it is the luck of the draw and who you are, right? You know, I have a great wife who helps with that. I have a family that is, you know, some of them are great to be around, others are not. And I have a lot of friends that I grew up with. And you know, it's a challenge sometimes, right? Just the component that comes with working for a big company. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a trade-off, right? You do certain things to get certain things. And I think, to me, the biggest piece is being surrounded by people that can help keep you authentic, right? And who can keep you grounded. You know, I have 12 or 14 people coming to our house for Thanksgiving next week. And some of them are characters, you know. But I find that the people that you kind of grew up with and that you associate with either help you kind of stay grounded or not. And to me, that's been a big piece of it, right? So I don't know that there's a secret answer. I just think it's about the people that you associate with and the places and time you choose to put your energy. And then it's, you know, sometimes you just happen to be in the right place at the right time, where you can be authentic, and it can benefit you. Sometimes you can't be. I mean, depending on what kind of organization you're in, sometimes it's just not the atmosphere that works for you, right? And it has for me. So it's been a little bit fortuitous.
All right, thanks, Bill. I've got one last question, and then I'll turn it over to Millie. Last question here, in respect of time, is what would you say your personal brand is?
I would say it's being authentic and being honest. I would like to think that people would say that if, you know, if there's something that they need, I've been able to help people, right? You know, I recognize the opportunity that I have to assist people, to be honest with people, but also to help propel people if they're the right people in the right situation. And so I don't take those things lightly. You know, again, I'm at a point in my life and my career where I have the ability to do that. But I think it starts with being authentic and being true to who you are, you know, which has a lot to do with the piece around being honest with people. You know, the worst thing you can do, I think, is to tell somebody that they can do something that you know good and well they can't do. Because it just means they may not be able to do it here. It doesn't mean they can't do it somewhere else. But that's a tough message for people to hear. But I think for me, it's important, and I feel, you know, I feel good when I'm able to do that. Not that I like going around telling people, here's what you can't do. But, you know, if Greg's walking around saying, hey, I want to be the CEO, you know, my responsibility is to Greg to say, hey, listen, you may be a CEO of a company somewhere, but it's not going to be Johnson & Johnson.
There you go, Greg.
Now, so let's reframe what you can do, and if that's in line with what you want to do, let's go for it, right? But don't think you're going to be the CEO, because you're not, right? So.
I lied. One last question.
Okay, one more. Brian.
So looking at the pie model of career development, performance, image, and exposure, how would you rank those three factors in terms of developing and getting ahead in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. To me, it's real easy. It's like a pyramid. Earlier in your career, it's performance, image, and exposure. And later in your career, it's exposure, image, and performance. And the reality is, I would say this if you didn't have that video on. I would say it with the video on, but the reality is, over time, you build up a reservoir of goodwill with people. So the reason that balance is inverted, I think, is because if you are normally somebody who performs, and normally somebody who operates at a high level, and normally somebody who does really, really thorough work, well organized, you're really, really efficient, then at some point you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. Just like the opposite. You know, if you're a normal mess up, you become known as the what? The normal mess up. And so the more that you build up in your career, the longer you're around, the more responsibility you have, the more people are willing to say, when they're sitting at that table, you know what, that's uncharacteristic of Tisha. I just haven't seen that. You know, and you get sometimes the benefit of the doubt. And again, we're all human beings, right? So if Scott Whyte, my boss, if Darzalex tanks and Yondelis tanks and Zytiga doesn't turn around, but Scott really likes Bill, and Scott really wants to see me successful, and Scott thinks I'm working really hard, and I'm helping advance his initiatives, when Scott's sitting at my calibration with Jennifer, he's going to have reasons why the performance isn't where it is. Now, Scott's not stupid enough to do that for 2 or 3 years, but that exposure piece does matter, and it's just hard to conjure up a situation where it doesn't matter, because we're all human beings, you know, and that's a big piece of kind of managing your career, which is why I suggested making sure you think about who's going to weigh in on your performance, so that there are more people talking about all the great things that Millie has done in October of 2016. You know?
All right, that concludes the question and answer session.
Did
Is
you
there
have a
another
question?
one?
You know what, I'm just going to make a comment. I'm so loud, seriously. Okay. And I can't think of which program it was, but I did go to a program, I think you've been to it, where it was like a leadership program where a lot of presidents were talking, and I think your boss was actually there. So, and they said very similar to what you said about the pie, in the sense that once you get past a level, it's not that performance doesn't matter, it's just assumed. Like, it is assumed that you have good performance, because if you didn't have good performance, you wouldn't have continued to move up. If that kind of ties into what you were saying, and it just agreed with it 100%.
Yeah.
So they're not debating all the numbers, because everyone has that when they get to that level.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for participating. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Turn over to Millie.